right, folks. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. It's great that we've got people joining us from all around the world. So, hello, welcome to Creation Conversations, where we have got a special guest, Dr. Diane Eager. It's morning there for you, isn't it, Diane?
Yes, it's definitely morning here, yes.
Good.
Well, that's why in Australia we can say g'day, and that applies to morning, evening, or afternoon.
It doesn't matter where you are in the world. That's a very, very good get out clause there. Yeah, because it's late
Yes.
evening here in the UK. It's sort of 9 o'clock in the evening. It's mid afternoon in the States, and it's very early morning over in Australia. So we really are broadcasting all around the world. So before we start, Diane, would you like to just give us a little bit of a brief background to yourself and your involvement with creation research and your sort of medical or scientific background, very briefly?
I have a medical background. I was originally trained in medicine. I went into medical education. And before I joined creation research full-time, I was a university lecturer in biomedical sciences at the University of Canberra.
Mm-hmm.
But now I work full-time for creation research. I've done so for about 20 years. But before that, I used to do things on the side for them. So I've really been associated with it since creation research actually began as an official organisation. So yes, it goes back a while.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think I've known you for a fair few years as well, and I think I first met you in 2014 at the Answers in Genesis Mega Conference in the UK, and our paths have crossed many times as we've travelled. You've come over here, I've gone over there. So it's great to have you on the show and great to have a bit of a chat. Let's just start with a couple of things like we normally do, a few newsy little items. The first sort of big bit of news really is sort of a recap, because nearly a week ago now I was on this YouTube channel. You can see that on the screen there, Standing for Truth, and we did a debate, or Standing for Truth rather hosted a debate. You can see it there. It went out live, and it was a great session. We really enjoyed it. It was between myself and Taylor Gray from the Snake Was Right YouTube channel, and the debate was Young Earth Creation and Noah's Flood. It didn't happen. So it was a very provocative title. It was a very interesting debate. The views have been great. You can see there's over 1,300 views that we've had so far. It's probably gone up more by then. But I think have you seen the debate, Diane?
Yes, I watched it. Yes. Yes.
What did you think of it?
Good. And it was a very good discussion. And it was all done in good spirits. But what I thought was best from your side, in that you had some actual evidence and specific examples,
yes.
rather than just general statements. And I think that's the most important thing, that people say there's no evidence for creation and Noah's flood. There's actually millions of piles of evidence, and it's actual real evidence that we can see in the real world, and you presented some of that, so that was good. But it was a good discussion, and there were good questions.
That's good. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of that evidence tonight. In fact, it's quite similar evidence, I think, to what I used in the debate at one point. Before we get to that, though, let's just talk about one or two little things that I've been doing because I'm in the Isle of Wight at the moment. But before we get to that, make sure you go and check out Standing for Truth's YouTube channel. It's a great YouTube channel. They've got some great conversations on there. They've got some great interviews, some great debates. Check out the debate which I did with Taylor as well, and catch up on that and look down through the comments and stuff as well. There's some really interesting stuff there. This is what I've been up to, by the way, for our viewers. Can you see the dinosaur footprints there, just lying around on the beach, the three-toed footprints? We're on the Isle of Wight. It's also known as Dinosaur Isle, down on the south coast of the UK, a little island, because it's actually the sixth best place in the world for diversity of dinosaurs. So not necessarily in volume, in quantity, but for the different number of dinosaurs that are represented here. And what's interesting is all of the dinosaur bones and the footprints and the fossils come out of what's known as the Weld or the Weldon. And scientifically, the sort of the name that the secular scientists gave it was the Weldon Flood Basin, because it is a basin-shaped sort of hollow which is filled up with this Cretaceous, well, it's mostly clay and mudstone, but they've called it a flood basin because all of the evidence suggests that it was a great big flood that actually dumped all of the dinosaurs down and fossilized them. They're all been drowned. Dinosaurs and fossil trees and timber are mixed up with fossil ripples and seashells and turtles and all sorts of stuff. So it's a great find, and this is probably our best find so far. There's not been as many fossils as I'd have hoped because we haven't had any good scaring tides. But let's just hold that up to the camera and see if we can get that in focus. There we go. You can see all of the black stuff is the bone itself. The white stuff is calcite, which is sort of infilled the bone. And this is actually, it's a bit of dinosaur bone. It's a bit of dinosaur vertebrae. Probably iguanodon, but we're not 100% sure. And it's probably a tailbone as well from down near the base of the tail, a caudal vertebrae. So that's a really nice, a nice little find there. And to lead into what Diane's going to talk about tonight, I found this very interesting because this is where I went to the other day. I've had wonderful weather, and this is actually officially the warmest botanical gardens in the UK. So that's it's quite a statement, but it's interesting because down on the south coast of the UK, you're generally a bit warmer. But in this particular garden, down on the Isle of Wight, it's actually between 5 to 6 degrees on average warmer. That's degrees Celsius for our American friends, warmer than it is in the rest of the UK. So you really do have not only a Mediterranean climate, but also a climate that's very similar to what it would have been in the medieval warm period when things were a lot warmer, including, and you might recognize some of these, Diane, some wonderful tree ferns. This is actually in their southern hemisphere exhibit, similar to Tasmania.
They're lovely.
I just love the fiddleheads, as those
oh
ferns
yes,
unfurl.
I do too. We have those at Jurassic Ark in Australia. Yes,
Just
at our
think they're
fossil and garden
absolutely beautiful.
Site. Yes.
Of course, tree ferns are living fossils, haven't changed in 90 to 100 supposed million years. Likewise, the cycads, these are the Jurassic cycads, made the news last year all around the world, actually, because they flowered for the first time in 90 million years. So... of course, what it does tell you is A, they're still cycads, so they haven't actually evolved in that supposed 90 million years, but also B, the big thing they made about it was that they was actually able to flower because it was warm, and it's been the warmest it's ever been. So definitely climate change, but one thing you've know for sure is that it used to be warm when those cycads were flowering in the fossil record. It got colder, and now it's warming up again, and really... climate change, we certainly don't deny climate change at creation research, because if you look throughout history, you can see the climate's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone up, it's gone down, and it's just doing the same thing today. So some nice examples of living fossils, that's what I've been up to. But Diane, I believe you've got something interesting to talk to us that comes from down in Australia today.
Yes, something very Australian. Here we are. You recognise these? Seeing that we're talking about plants that live in the southern hemisphere.
I think they had some of those at the botanical gardens, actually.
Oh, did they? Yes.
So are they gum leaves?
Yes,
eucalyptus?
They're eucalyptus leaves. They're eucalyptus leaves. Yes, that I picked off a tree yesterday. Yes, and the standard story is that they evolved in Australia. Well, let's have a look at the evidence for that, and also they're considered to be evidence of that things evolved in Australia. So I've got a little slideshow here. If we could
let's see if I can get the slideshow up.
All right. Let's have a look at what's up a gum tree, and the standard story is that they must have evolved here. And in fact, Charles Darwin of evolution fame, he visited Australia. And now, is the slides going to advance?
They should do if you click on them. Let's just try this. We had a bit of fun, folks, trying to get the slideshows
to work. Yes, we did indeed. Yes. No, I've.
No. If you just hit the if you hit your Windows key, Diane, and
Yes.
hover over your PowerPoint presentation, if you go to the screen, which is it's full screen, you should then be
Yes.
able to advance from there.
No, is it going? No, it's not.
So you'll need to bring your PowerPoint presentation actually up, so you won't be able to see the browser.
That's fine. Yes. All right. Now let's try that. All right.
There we go. That's working. That's working perfectly.
That's working
So
now. Is it? That's good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, Darwin did visit Australia. He had mixed feelings about the place, but as he looked at the wildlife, the plants, and the animals, he wrote this in his diary: "An unbeliever in everything beyond his own reason might explain surely two distinct creators must have been at work." Now, notice he's still thinking as a 19th century Englishman who believed in a creator. But then he went on and wrote this: "A geologist perhaps would suggest that the periods of creation have been distinct and remote, the one from the other." Now, notice the long age thinking that's coming into this, because by this time, Darwin has been well and truly influenced by Charles Lyell and the very long ages, and the idea that the differences that we see in the living world relates to the times when different things evolved. So by the time he wrote The Origin of Species, he'd completely dismissed the creator, and it all just happened by natural selection. The usual theory is, well, Australia is at the back end of the earth. It's been separated from the rest of the world, and so any plants that started to evolve here went off in a different direction. And because we have a rather harsh climate here, we developed some rather weird plants. And so
I
we
like that description of Australian plants. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So what's distinctive about gum trees? Let's have a look. And the technical term is eucalyptus trees. You might have heard that word in the context of eucalyptus oil, which is absolutely wonderful stuff. It's good for coughs, it's good for cleaning, it's all sorts of useful stuff. Now, gum trees were named that by Captain Cook, but the term eucalyptus was actually turned by a Frenchman, but it's not a French word. Like a lot of terminology in the scientific world, it comes from either Latin or Greek. So this is two Greek words, eu meaning well, and kalyptos, which means covered. So we have well covered. So well covered what? Well, here is what's well covered. And these are not seed pods. These are actually their flower buds. And you can see even from this photo that they're quite sort of thick and dense. And so eucalyptus just means well-covered flowers. Now, in the photo at the bottom there, you can see a line is starting to form so that it's coming apart with a little cap at the top. And that will actually split up. And inside of that is the eucalyptus flower. Or they're sometimes called gum blossoms. So here you can see down the bottom, there's one that's still completely covered. Up to the right, you can see the little cap that is starting to fall off. And gum blossoms don't really have any petals. They just have masses and masses of stamen with pollens on the end. And so they're all folded up and then they just burst open. And the stamens come in all sorts of colours, sort of varying from a pale creamy colour to a brilliant red or a brilliant orange and pink and everything in between. And they're full of nectar. So the bees actually love them, and you can get eucalyptus honey. It's very nice, but they're mainly pollinated by birds and small mammals that clamber around in the trees. So here you can see in the middle there, you've got a bee really enjoying it, but it's not close enough to any of the pollen, whereas a bird or an animal will come and put its face in that and it'll get covered with pollen and then take that away, and the plant will be pollinated just like any other flowering plant. And then when they're fertilized, all of those stamens fall off and the seeds develop in the base in the bases there, and they gradually grow and expand until these are the seed pods. Now, they're colloquially called gum nuts, but you can't eat them. They're actually they're very woody. There's nothing nutritious in them. And when the seeds are fully formed, they dry out, and there's a valve at the bottom there that just opens, and the seeds are very, very tiny, and they just blow away. So they grow into huge, huge trees, but they have these really tiny little seeds that you can barely see.
Those seeds there, is that like under a microscope or something?
Sorry, let me go back. Oh dear, no, it's not going to go back, is it?
It's not going to go back.
No, let me see. Yes, it will. Oh no, it's not, is it? No,
Sorry,
it's
I've
not.
messed up your
I'm going
presentation.
forward even. No, which means I've gone too far. But anyway, yes, that they are under a microscope.
Okay.
All right. So why do they grow in Australia? We've actually skipped over a fair bit. Can we go back and start?
Yeah, let's see if we can go. Let's see if we can go back. If you go down, can you not go backwards? If you where you are now, if you go to the does that go backwards?
Yes, there we go.
There we go.
Yes, right. We've gone backwards.
That's fine.
Right. So all of our observations of eucalyptus trees, and in fact any flowering plant or even any non-flowering plant for that, is as we observe the biological world, all we ever see is things multiplying after their kind. When you go through that cycle of the well-covered flowers opening up, being pollinated by small mammals and birds in Australia, forming gum nuts, seeds floating away, you always end up with gum trees. And there are hundreds of species of them, but they're all very clearly gum trees. And no one's ever seen them evolve from anything or into anything. So our observations of the real world are that things multiply after their kind. The usual excuse that's given as to why we can't see evolution in the living world is that it happens too slowly, and therefore we can't see it within a human lifetime. We have to look at the big, long periods that Darwin had come to believe in when he was influenced by Lyell, and we need to look at the fossil record. So let's have a look at whether the fossils show evidence of evolution in eucalyptus trees. Well, here are some fossil eucalyptus leaves. And in fact, this comes from a paper in this journal, PLOS1, from 2011, which was entitled Oldest Eucalyptus Fossils. So here they are, folks, oldest eucalyptus fossils. And they look exactly like the ones I picked off a tree yesterday. And they've got a few photos there. The green picture in the bottom right, that's actually a living one, to show you that the pattern of veins in the leaves is exactly the same. So their overall shape and size is exactly the same, and the pattern of veins is exactly the same. Nothing has changed. And here are their flower buds. They're looking a bit battered, of course. Well, they would after they've been buried in the ground. But they look exactly the same as the flower buds that we see growing on trees now. And here we have a bunch of gum nuts looking exactly like the seed pods that we have on the trees outside the garden here now. So what's changed? Well, nothing. And so this is the name of the paper, Oldest Known Eucalyptus Macrofossils. That just means fossils that are big enough to see. But look where they come from, South America. They're not found in Australia, these so-called oldest fossils. So why do they grow in Australia if their oldest fossils are found in South America? Well, it is actually because of natural selection, but not because of evolution. Now, think about natural selection, what that term actually means. In plain English, to select means just to choose between existing alternatives. So natural selection is not a creative process. Natural selection does not make any new kinds. All it does is to eliminate the unfit. It selects some things out and leaves other things intact. So at the best, it's a conservative process which will eliminate things that have somehow degenerated or gone wrong and leave the healthy ones there. Or sometimes it will eliminate the healthy things because the environment's changed. But it will not make anything, so it's not a creative process at all. Now, gum trees will grow in other climates besides the harsh climate of the first photo I showed you, which is actually at Gympie. You would have seen those gum trees, Joseph, when you visited Jurassic Ark. This is also in Australia, but this is a lovely place called Springbrook, which is subtropical, and you can see from the waterfall there, it's lovely and moist. And so there is a rainforest here. And as you go down into this little valley, it gets warmer and moister. And you can actually see the plants changing so that you start at the top with the typical dry, what's called dry sclerophyll forest, which just means dry hardleaf forest, typical of Australian bush. You go down into this little valley and there's all sorts of lush, beautiful rainforest plants and a lot more variety. And that's because down in the valley, lots more plants can survive and thrive, and the gum trees have a fair bit of competition. So they are just part of a much more varied ecosystem. And you do get gum trees growing in New Guinea, which of course is a purely tropical country because it's almost on the equator. But there you've got typical tropical rainforest as well. And so gum trees are just one part of a much varied ecosystem. In Australia, those plants which would grow in a nice, warm, moist climate, they can't survive in the harsh climate, and particularly in places where there are fairly poor soils. So the gum trees just don't have any competition. So they thrive and the others die out. So that's natural selection, but it hasn't made anything. All it is a sorting out process. So here we're back now at the behind the gardens at Jurassic Ark, where we have our wonderful fossil and garden site. And I hope when you are allowed to travel internationally, you will come and see us. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing. We love to have visitors, and I'm sure, Joseph, you're very anxious to come here.
I will definitely be back as soon as I can, as soon as I'm allowed out of the country.
Yeah, as soon as you're allowed out or allowed in here. We're in Australia, we're not allowed out at the moment.
No.
We just can't go anywhere. But yes, I'm itching to go and visit my friends in the UK as well. So this is what we have, typical Australian bush. Now, these did not evolve here. They simply survived here. That's natural selection or survival of the fittest at work, but nothing's evolved. So what's the real history of gum trees? Well, gum trees were created according to their kind. All our observations are that that's what we see in the living world. That's what we see in the fossil record. So we are looking at the actual evidence. We're not making this up. We're speaking from the actual evidence as well as from the historical record of the only observer who was actually there, which of course is the one who wrote it down for us in Genesis. Right? All our observations are they reproduce after their kind. Now, we're also told that the world has gone downhill and it was devastated at the time of Noah's flood and the environment degenerated. Originally, everything was very good. Now we know that everything is not very good. There are very diverse environments and some of them are very harsh. So only the tough survive. Only things that have features that will allow them to survive in those environments will survive. And that's what's happened with gum trees. So in the beginning, they would have been much more widespread all over the earth, just like everything else, because the climate seems to have been much more uniform and mild, which is why you had cycads in the Isle of Wight. Then natural selection eliminated them from most other continents because other plants would do better in those climates. But in Australia, they didn't have any competition from other plants, so they survived. So survival of the fittest, a real process, but no evolution involved. In fact, they are a tribute to the degeneration that's happened since the world started out good but has gone downhill. And they continue to reproduce after their kind, and that's what we observe in the living world now. So what do we have up a gum tree? We have evidence for creation and Noah's flood. No evolution. So let's, if there are any questions that have come in
Excellent
on this
stuff. Well, I'll
topic
check
or
out the chat.
anything
Yeah,
else,
if you wanna come back, use the Windows
yes,
key to
I'll
come
go
back.
back
I'll
to
turn this presentation off. There
the
we are. We're
screen
both
share,
there.
and if you finish that off, yes, here we
That's
go
great
again.
stuff. Yeah,
That's good.
those fossil, because I've heard, just generally in going through university and stuff, and Australian and unique animals and stuff because they evolved there. But the fact that you've got the world's oldest fossil gum tree and it's not even in Australia, it's
Yes,
quite.
there's a very big ocean between
It
Australia
really is, isn't
and
there?
South America.
That is
Half a world away.
I know that's just remarkable to be able to see that. So it really does put into perspective. No, of course they didn't evolve there. The supposedly oldest one isn't even there. And the fact that you were talking about the other ecosystems, which have got gum trees in them as well as loads of others. It's just so happened that they've managed to survive in Australia, where most other trees just wouldn't be able to. So yeah, no evolution at all. And it's interesting. A lot of the people that you talk to, especially proponents of evolution, and they almost use natural selection as like some magical thing that can make decisions. I mean, I remember watching Brian Cox, the BBC science presenter, do a program on biology, and he was talking about this mysterious force which drives evolution. And you're like, this is sounding slightly new agey or a bit sort of spiritual here. What are we talking about? And then he says, and that force is natural selection. And you're like, all natural selection is killing something if it's not able to survive. That's simple it is. If it's not able to survive, it dies.
Yes.
It's not a remarkable concept. It's just something that we observe every day. So that's some really great stuff. Let's have a look on the chat and see what we actually have here. Lots of people tuning in to say hi. No questions that I can see at the moment. What have we got? Oh, here's Jerome says, is there a way to rewatch from the beginning? Yes. All of our creation conversations, everything that we do out live gets stored on our YouTube and our Facebook. We put them, we categorize them underneath Creation Conversations, the playlist. So if you want to watch this again, and this goes to everybody who's watching this, if you want to watch this or any of our past Creation Conversations again, just go to our YouTube channel and you can click on the Creation Conversations playlist. It's the first thing that comes up when you go to our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to watch all of these again, plus any more that we will be doing as well. So thank you everybody who tuned in to watch. We had a few people watching, which is great. Thank you for everybody who tuned in to say hi to us as well. We're coming up towards the end of the presentation now. But Diane, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
That was we must get you back on again at some point in the.
I'd be happy to do so.
And hang on, we've got a question here just come up now. Let's put that up on the screen so everybody can see it. Did eucalyptus trees in California originate in Australia?
Oh, yes, they did. Actually, we've exported eucalyptus trees all over the world. They grow in Israel as well because the climate happens to suit it. Same with California. You've got a relatively hot, dry climate. So they have been taken all over the world, but they're man-made plantations or they've just taken to the wild now. They're pretty tough. So yes, they now grow in lots of places, but that's because they've been transported by people.
And just like, we were in Ventnor Botanical Gardens, and I fell in love with tree ferns when I was in Australia, and so I've always wanted to get tree ferns and stuff. But they get...
Actually, you'd like this, Joseph. I went to the Botanic Gardens in Canberra here, and you know how we have to have social distancing? Which over here is 1.5 meters, all right, which is a bit less than 6 feet, but anyway. Yeah. And they had a sign up saying, social distancing in the gardens. And to give you an idea of how far that was, they had, you must keep one tree fern frond away from other people.
Brilliant. Well, that's one way of describing it. Yeah, but I just think they're fantastic things, and just we actually import almost all of our tree ferns because they grow very, very slowly. It's like about an inch a year or something like that. And we import most of our tree ferns that we have in the UK from Tasmania, just because the climate is just slightly cooler and just slightly closer to what we would experience. So they've been exported. We've got one more question just come in, which I think we've just about got enough time for. Let's put it up on the screen there. Surely, if the gum tree was unable to adapt over so-called millions of years, does this disprove evolution?
Well, yes, they've stayed the same. I mean, adapt means to change. Now, adaptation is also a real process, but it does have its limits. It's a built-in process to allow any living organism to cope with small changes in the environment. But it can't change from going through a rainforest environment to going to the sort of dry climate that you've got out in the bush in Australia with the poor soil. So yes, that's actually another proof of evolution, that they died out in South America, but they still survived.
They still survived, yeah. And it's the same for all living fossils, which is a term coined by Charles Darwin. And they're all up and down the geological record, all the way back to the supposed earliest life forms, which were sort of stromatolites. And stromatolites are found all the way up the fossil record. They're still alive today. They haven't changed in the slightest. So, they're stuck in a rut. They're just not evolving. There's just no evidence of it. We have just had one last question come through, and this will absolutely be the last question no matter what, because I think it's quite easily answerable, and we will have to say goodbye. And that is, are eucalyptus trees more flammable than others in Australia?
They are very flammable because of the resin and the oil. And so if you get a quite fierce forest fire, it will spread very, very rapidly because of the eucalyptus oil, and the eucalyptus oil will actually start vaporizing, and that will help spread the fire. Yes.
You've basically just got a gas then, haven't you, in the upper layers? Yeah, it doesn't go well. Thank you very much for that question, Marianne. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and watching. Be sure to tune in next time for our next creation conversations. I still don't know who we're going to have on as a guest, so that will be a surprise to us all, including myself, but it certainly will be very, very interesting as we try and make them all. Do make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, do like our Facebook page, and you'll get notifications as to when all of our live programs come up. Diane, thank you very, very much for joining us this evening.
Our pleasure.
Goodbye, everybody, and God bless. We'll see you later.